Good morning, everybody. Let's call this meeting to order. We are having some technical difficulties with the screens that are in front of the directors. All of the public-facing technology is working just fine. The presentation will show up on the screens here. There may be some functionality on the screens that are in front of the directors, but if we find that there is functionality that is not working, we'll just work around that. Should not be a big problem. Clerk, please call the roll.
Good morning, members. If you can please make the selections on your tablets. Chair, we have a quorum with 13 members present and 2 members absent.
Thank you, Clerk. Let's begin this meeting with non-agenda public comment. This provides 2 minutes for anybody who'd like to comment on something that is not on today's agenda, but is within the purview of MTS. Clerk, do we have any non-agenda public comment?
We have no public comments, Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to our consent items. We are going to return item 15 to staff today. We expect to bring that back in July, but item 15 on consent will be returned to staff for today. Otherwise, the consent agenda includes items 3 through 18 without item 15. Clerk, is there any public comment on the consent items?
Yes, we do. Blair Beekman, if you can please unmute yourself. Blair, if you can please unmute yourself.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I had my hand raised for non-agenda public comment. Did you not see it?
It was past the public comment section.
Ma'am, that's not correct. Councilperson, Board Chairman Whitburn was speaking as public can speak on items. I put my hand up. You were very, very quick in not allowing public comment. Please work on that. I wanted to comment on that item or on the consent calendar. Well, I didn't have much to say for consent. I had my thoughts raised for non-agenda public comment. I guess just once again, I like the work that you do at MTS. I hope we can make good decisions in the following days. Thank you.
That concludes public comments, Chair.
Thank you very much, Clerk. Do we have a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion from Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp. Do we have a second? We have a second, and I believe Director Leyva Gonzalez has a couple of recusals.
Yes, I'd like to recuse myself from items 5 and 7. Thank you, Chair.
All right, Director Leyva Gonzalez is recusing himself from items 5 and 7. Item 15 has been returned to staff. Seeing no further discussion, Clerk, please call the roll on the balance of the consent items.
Members, if you can please make your selections on the tablets. Chair, the motion passes with 13 members voting yes, 2 members absent, and with Director Leyva Gonzalez recusing himself from items 5 and 7.
Thank you very much, Clerk. We'll move to item 19. It's a public hearing per Assembly Bill 2561 on the status of vacancies, recruitment, and retention. Nguyen is going to provide our presentation this morning.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Stumbo. I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer, along with Nguyen, the Talent Acquisition Manager. We're here to present some good news on our recruitment efforts and successes on historically hard to fill positions. I know we have a full agenda, so we're going to keep the presentation to under 10 minutes and open it up for questions after that. Thuy?
I'm actually aiming for 5 minutes. Again, my name is Nguyen, Manager of Talent Acquisition, and I'm going to provide a brief update on Assembly Bill 2561. Assembly Bill 2561 was enacted in response to statewide concerns regarding low staffing shortages and workforce sustainability. The bill became effective January 1st of 2025, requiring public agencies to report on an annual basis at a public hearing regarding vacancy rates, recruitment efforts, and retention strategies. The bill requires public agencies to provide additional information should any of its collective bargaining units meet or exceed a vacancy rate of 20% or higher. MTS currently does not have any bargaining units that meet this reporting threshold. We presented to the board for the first time last year and continue to do so as required by this legislation. As staffing is discussed throughout this brief presentation, I just want to make note that recruitment and retention efforts are thoughtfully prioritized while balancing operational needs, training quality, long-term workforce stability, and fiscal responsibility. Oh, I'm sorry. The following slides will go over the vacancy trends and ongoing recruitment and retention strategies across the agency. As you can see here, we have the current vacancy rates by bargaining unit. We have 5 bargaining units representing our frontline operational positions here at MTS. Overall, the vacancy rates have stabilized or improved. ATU represents primarily our bus operators and has improved year over year. SMART, representing primarily our train operators, light rail vehicle, and maintenance away classifications, has also shown improvement. IBEW, representing our bus maintenance classifications, experienced a slight increase in vacancy levels. TEOA, representing our code compliance classifications, experienced the largest increase in vacancy rates of 10%. IBEW also represents our construction safety flag persons, and they did see a slight improvement since last year. So as mentioned earlier, none of our bargaining units meet the reporting threshold of 20%. However, we're using this as an opportunity to provide additional context on positions that have historically been challenging to fill. Just like the vacancy rates, overall, the levels across these positions have improved or stabilized. Bus operators has improved and now is meeting our operational staffing needs. Mechanic vacancies have slightly increased and continue to reflect the ongoing challenges associated with recruiting and retaining skilled trades positions in a competitive labor market. Along with that, the time required for internal progression through the apprenticeship program. The assistant lineman classifications have experienced the most significant improvement since last year, reflecting increased outreach efforts and weekly interviews. Flag person has also experienced improvement from last year, but the classification continues to experience challenges related to working conditions and unique scheduling requirements. And lastly, code compliance has experienced the most significant increase by 10% from 5.3 to 15.6%, but again, still below the 20% reporting threshold. This is primarily due to intentionally slowing down the hiring pace and reducing the class size to focus on training quality. The increase also reflects continued competition from law enforcement agencies. Many of our co-compliance inspectors utilize this position as a stepping stone for their law enforcement careers. So while several positions do have specific challenges, many of these classifications highlighted share broader workforce and labor market challenges. Some of the challenges include competitive labor markets, skilled trade shortages, retirement and attrition trends, positions requiring nights, weekends, and holidays, and balancing operational staffing needs, training quality, and long-term retention efforts. Several of these classifications rely extensively on training and certifications and internal progression pipelines, which can naturally slow down the staffing levels and hiring timelines. For example, our bus mechanics must first progress through the Servicer A pipeline before advancing into the apprenticeship program, and then ultimately into the mechanic classifications. Despite these challenges, vacancy levels have improved across the board. I think I'm experiencing some technical difficulties. Okay. So what are we doing to ensure that we're meeting our staffing needs? We are being proactive and comprehensive in our approach to recruitment and retention across all classifications. Our strategy focuses on increasing brand awareness, attracting quality candidates, improving long-term retention, supporting training success, and maintaining overall workforce stability. One of the key efforts over the last year has been expanding our outreach to better connect with passive and active job seekers. Last year, we attended about 50 job fairs, and this year we're projected to attend well over 70 events. These efforts help increase the visibility of our transit careers and strengthen our applicant pool. In addition, we continue to partner with workforce development organizations like San Diego Workforce Partnership, San Diego Job Corps Center, educational institutions, and community-based organizations like Urban League of San Diego and Second Chance. And actually, we have 2 recruiters there today doing some mock interviews. We've grown our community partners list to nearly 400 contacts, reaching them weekly of our open job positions. Internally, we continue to review our hiring and onboarding processes to identify opportunities to improve the candidate experience and reduce the time to fill. And as mentioned earlier, one of the big focus from this last year has been evaluating our training class to ensure that we are focusing on the quality to have better long-term employee retention. So in conclusion, overall staffing level trends have continued to show stabilization across several historically difficult to fill areas. We'll continue evaluating and refining recruitment, retention, and workforce development efforts. Ultimately, these efforts are intended to support sustainable staffing levels while continue to maintain operational readiness and service reliability. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Clerk, let's open the public hearing on this item. Do we have any public comment?
Yes, we do. Blair Beekman, if you can please unmute yourself.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Thank you for this item. I guess as kind of an anecdotal tale story for this sort of item. I'm not all that experienced with these sort of things, but I'm trying to learn and listen and hear and understand. And I originally come from the San Francisco Bay Area. Oakland's going through, their budget issues right now. They are dealing with how to, they have only a deficit higher than San Diego, the city of San Diego, in terms of, deficit concerns. So they were thinking of cutting their city worker health, Medicare and health, insurance that city workers have to pay for it themselves, and the retirement plans. I think this is a time that we really have, and same with the SD, MTS, and the same with the city of San Diego. I mean, there's concerns that are there that we have about budget concerns, and asking city government staff to take a cut in pay, however small. I mean, those sort of things I think are really important for morale in a way that actually it gives a sense of trust and tells, the community that how dedicated city workers are towards working on issues. So we can have good budgets and stuff. But there has to be a balance in understanding that. And I think Oakland has crossed a line that as much as they want to help their community, they've gone a bit too far. I hope we know how to strike that balance, that city workers and transit workers can take a cut where applicable, but that doesn't hurt them to such a degree that we hurt basic services of our city workers. Thanks.
That concludes public comments, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. We will now close the public hearing. We'll open board discussion on this item, if there is any. This is an informational item, so no motion is necessary on this item. Seeing no board discussion on this item, we'll thank you both again, and we will move on to item 20, which is a public hearing on the fiscal year 2027 operating budget. Gordon Meyer is going to provide this presentation. Feel free to get settled in and begin the presentation whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Gordon Meyer. As mentioned, today we'll be presenting the final proposed FY27 operating budget. So as mentioned, this is the final draft that we're presenting today. So looking back to last week, we had looked at two different versions. What we're presenting today is version 2. So version 1 included the fare increase and version 2 did not include the fare increase. And what you're seeing today is version 2. And that was also what was available for the public hearing online as well. So looking back to the last budget details presentation that we did in May, there were a couple changes that we wanted to cover here because they haven't been discussed yet. So we did increase the budget for flagging wages based on a request for additional full-time equivalents that we'll get into the details on at a later slide. In terms of a budget impact, it was nearly a net zero, and that's because the flagging cost recovery is offsetting that because most of those wages will actually be billed through a capital improvement program. Beyond that, just to reiterate, we did, based on last week's board meeting, remove the fare increase. So that is not reflected in any of the figures that we're looking at today. So in terms of this presentation, we briefly want to go over the final revenue assumptions, the final expense assumptions, and talk about the things we haven't talked about yet. And then ultimately we'll look at the 5-year forecast in a little more detail than we have in the prior presentations. So to summarize the final revenue assumptions, operating revenues in this final version are projected at $116.5 million. That's a 1.9% increase over FY26. Within that, passenger revenue is projected at $83 million, and that's based on the average fare of $1 and ridership of 83.1 million passengers. So once again, that does not include a fare increase. Other operating revenues, that includes things like energy credits, advertising, interest, etc., is essentially staying flat versus FY26, and we're projecting $33.4 million in total for FY27. And within that, just as a refresher, the main drivers were energy credit revenue is increasing due to our price assumptions and selling some of our banked credits. Advertising revenue was increasing because of the new marketing initiatives that are planned for FY27. And then what's really bringing it down and keeping it at FY26 levels is that decrease in interest revenue because we no longer have the operating deficit reserves or stimulus funds. Subsidy revenue is projected at $366.1 million. That's a 26.8% increase. And within the subsidy revenue for FY27, federal revenues in the operating budget are increasing by $6.2 million. That was not an increase in our overall federal funds, but rather an increase in the amount that we're allocating towards preventive maintenance in the operating budget. TDA is increasing $26.7 million, or almost 25%. The main reason for that significant increase is that we are shifting an additional $25 million from the capital budget to operations in FY27. So $50 million is being shifted in total. And then that also reflects the low growth assumption of 1% that's built into our budget as well. For Transnet, there's two different portions. The formula funds are increasing by 1.3 million, or 3%. That is reflective of the 2.1% regional growth assumption for sales tax receipts. And then the operating reimbursement piece, which is the reimbursement we received from Sandag for our BRT and Midcoast services, is projected at 39.4 million based on those projected expenses. STA is projected at 30.1 million in total. We have 11.3 million of that going into the operating budget. And then our final number for SB 125 TIRCP is projected at 52.3 million. So about 10 million of that is for our SB 125 funded activities. So the extra trolley service, security, Route 910, et cetera. And then we're planning to use 42.6 million to balance our operating budget in FY27. And then last line there, other subsidy revenue is decreasing by 2 million. That was the decrease in fast track revenue that's involved with a swap with Transnet between us and Sandag. 2 million less in fast track, but we'll receive 2 million more in Transnet funding. So here is the final proposed revenues for FY27. You can see operating revenues in total are projected at 116.5 million. That's an increase of 2.2 million or 1.9%. Subsidy is projected at 366.1 million in total. And so overall revenues, including reserves, is projected at 482.5 million for FY27, and that's a 2.4% increase over FY26. So service levels, there's no changes here versus what was presented in the last couple meetings. So on the rail side, 2.6% reduction in car revenue miles, and that's because we are planning on running 2-car trains during certain non-peak times. And then on the fixed route bus side, the revenue miles are decreasing by 2.4%. That's reflective of the final January service change and then the additional changes that are planned for June as well, looking at service efficiencies. And then on the paratransit side, we can't schedule that. That is a demand-based service, and we're forecasting a 9.1% increase in billable revenue hours for FY27. So moving on to expenses, we're only going to go into details on one of these because there's been no changes to the ones that we're not going to cover. So personnel, we haven't talked about position tables to this point. The request was still being finalized up until a couple of weeks ago. And so we are in this proposed budget requesting an additional 32.8 full-time equivalents for construction safety flag persons. There's a couple different factors that come up with that 32.8 increase. One is that we are requesting a true addition of 20 positions. That would be 8 full-time and 12 part-time employees. And then we do need to update our FTE assumption for this position from 0.5 to 0.75. And that's based on the current hours data of how much the part-time construction safety flag persons are actually working. And we just want to reflect that accurately in the position tables. These positions are being requested in order to support the Orange Line renovation project specifically. And because of that, they'll primarily be billed through the CIP. And so the actual impact to the dollars in the operating budget is near zero. So looking at the position table in the budget book, we are budgeting 1,780 FTEs in total, but 30 of those positions were frozen empty positions during FY 2026. And so we're budgeting 1,750 active FTEs in the final FY 27 draft. This slide is to accommodate a new requirement. So this is Government Code Section 54953, and this requires that prior to taking final action, the legislative body shall orally report a summary of a recommendation for a final action on the salaries, salary schedules, or compensation paid during the open meeting in which the final action is to be taken. And so here we've summarized all of the wage assumptions for the different groups under MTS. So for represented, we have 5 different labor agreements that are listed there. Each one of these labor agreements is scheduled to receive a 4% increase in FY27. And then non-represented employees, we're assuming a 4% merit pool as well for use at the CEO's discretion. And then we're also including the proposed salary grades for FY27. You can see that's the table to the right. So this is last year's salary grades increased by 4%, which is the assumed merit pool. So here is the final personnel costs that are reflected in the FY27 budget. So wages overall are increasing by 5.4 million or 4.4%. Fringe benefits overall are decreasing by 416,000 or almost 0.5%. And the reason the fringe benefits are decreasing is once again that change to the pension amortization policy for the San Diego Transit Defined Benefit Plan. So there were no changes to employee benefits with that, but it was a change to the payoff period for that unfunded liability. So overall, total personnel costs in this final draft are increasing by 4.9 million or 2.4%. So here you can see the final proposed expenses for FY27. That's all the major categories listed there. So we are projecting 482.5 million for FY27, and that represents an 11.4 million increase or 2.4% above FY26. So here you can see the final proposed budget. So recurring revenues are projected at 380 million. Total expenses are projected at 482.5 million. So that results in a structural deficit, which is recurring revenues minus expenses, of 102.2 million for FY27. Then in order to get to our overall balanced budget, we do need to reflect the non-recurring funding sources as well. So we include the 50 million that's being shifted from the capital budget, and then the 52.3 million in SB 125 funding. And with those included, we do have a balanced budget for FY27. So last couple slides here, you've seen this 5-year forecast during the last presentation, but we did want to, now that we've settled on one for now, we do want to go through in a little more detail for the assumptions behind that. And so on the revenue side, we are assuming in the forecast on the next slide that passenger revenue growth averages 2% per year from FY28 through FY2031. The forecast that we're using does not reflect any fare increases, phase 1 or phase 2. So it's just 2% per year organic growth assumed. Other operating revenue declines on average in this projection, and that's due to the declining interest revenue that's projected. Federal revenues are assumed to remain flat. That's kind of a wait and see. The surface transportation reauthorization will hopefully occur at the end of September of 2026. And so we should have more information on that at that time, but not assuming any increases or decreases at this time. The sales tax revenue projections, that's TDA and Transnet, are based on Sandag's forecast. So for TDA, we have growing by 2.1% on average per year. And then Transnet, which includes both the formula and the cash receipts piece, is projected to grow at an average of 3.3% per year. This forecast also assumes that we shift 50 million per year from the capital budget to the operations every year. And then SB 125 TIRCP, that is the balancing mechanism until those funds are exhausted. And it does assume that we receive all of our remaining scheduled SB 125 TIRCP funding. So there is some risk that could be lost at the state, that final payment. But at this time, we are assuming we'll receive it. On the expense side, the forecast assumes that service levels remain where they are today, so it does not assume any further service decreases or increases. We do assume the continued recovery of ADA paratransit volumes. We have them growing 5% in FY28 and then 2% every year after. And then we are also assuming that inflation beginning in FY28 starts to reach more historical norms. So 2.8% to 3%. Wage and benefit growth is assumed at 4% per year. That's based on kind of the status quo right now with the collective bargaining agreements and the current merit pool. And then based on these assumptions, overall average expense growth is projected to range from anywhere from 2.7% to 4.1%. So here is the final projection. So once again, this does not include any fare increases. And you can see FY27 is the final budget that we're proposing today. And then you can see the structural deficit is projected to grow based on these assumptions to about 147 million by fiscal year 2031. And then based on these assumptions, we are expected to be able to balance our operating budget through fiscal year 2029. And then we would have a true operating deficit in fiscal year 30, where currently we'd be expected to have about an $80.5 million deficit. So that brings me to the staff recommendation that the MTS Board of Directors, 1, receive testimony, review, and comment on the FY27 MTS operating budget at a public hearing, and 2, enact resolution 26-8 in substantially the same format as attachment B, adopting the FY27 operating budget for the MTS, San Diego Transit Corporation, San Diego Trolley, San Diego and Arizona Eastern Railway Company Corporation, MTS Contract Services, and the Coronado Ferry. And with that, I'd be happy to open it up for questions or comments.
Thank you. Clerk, let's open the public hearing on this item. Do we have any public comment?
We do. Blair Beekman, if you can please unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you, Blair Beekman. Thank you for this item. A lot to hear. Thank you to everyone that you are actually going to be considering if you can hold off on rate increases for the disabled and the elderly. I've been trying to speak about that item, since you've been talking about the past few months now, that the initial $5 increase is very steep, very sharp. And a $2 increase or the rate freeze idea is even better. I think is a lot more practical. And I hope that in the very least, it can be considered as kind of the $5 is a bit strong at this time. And that just to have that acknowledgement is an important first step in how to talk about this item. So good luck how you can talk about rate freeze increases for a certain segment of the bus riding community, and is there a way to bring in totals, projected totals of all the other fare increases minus the small portion of disabled persons, and what that would mean? You could possibly bring in the rate increases for all the rest of passengers within the current budget projections. Thank you. And to also, it was nice to hear, encouraging to hear, did I hear within by 2028 or so that inflation will be starting to level off? And to hear those kind of statistics within a public meeting is really always encouraging to hear. And it sounded like a solid, good projection and a hopeful projection. So good luck that we can level out our inflation eventually. To have a hedge on that by simply keeping fares down now, I think can be helpful. Thank you.
That concludes public comments, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. We will close the public hearing and we will open board discussion on this item, beginning with Vice Chair Goebel.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for a nice staff report, comprehensive. A couple of things. I'm going to go ahead and move the staff recommendation to approve the budget as presented. I've got one addition, I guess, that rather than wait until the mid-year update, which is usually December or January, that we make that update in September, because at that point we will know the outcome of the fare increase vote by Sandag, and I think it's better that we put into the budget that number when we know it. At the same time, in September, we should have knowledge of any impact of a fare freeze program as well, and it would be good to know that information sooner than later as well. So that is my motion. I think it's fair, no pun intended, to increase fares since 2007. I hope the Transportation Committee votes yes. We increase fares each year for basic services to our constituents, such as trash fees. Our trash fee is going up 4% this year, and people use trash services, and so it's fair to show an increase in the service that's been used that all of us vote on. And I think it's appropriate as well to increase fares, and I think I'd like to see that shown in the budget in September rather than waiting to January, because that does impact on how you plan your expenses. If you don't get the fare increase, you've got to think about cutting expenses sooner rather than 3 months later. So my motion is to approve the staff recommendation with an addition that we bring back an updated budget in September after the results of the fare increase and the fare freeze program.
Thank you, Vice Chair Goebel. We'll go to Director Hall.
I'd like to second the motion. The Mike and San Diego Gas and Electric, I just got notice that they're looking at a $14 increase on electric and $8.45 on gas. So it's not like everybody's not doing it. And I know that's the wrong answer people want to hear, but the reality is we have to stay in business. So with that sense, I will second the motion.
Thank you, Director Hall. Director Elo Rivera.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation and all the work on this. I know this is, there's been multiple iterations of this conversation. Do you want to talk to the residents of San Diego about increasing trash fees and how normal that is in other places? You don't have to respond to that. No, is that the answer? Anyway, I appreciate where we're at. I definitely appreciate the last conversation we had and the willingness of the board to be creative and staff's responsiveness to our request that there's the creativity and the urgency applied to protecting our most vulnerable riders from the impacts of a fare increase. The path that I think we chose was one that was responsible in not accounting for revenue that has not been approved yet, and also puts us on a path to make a responsible decision to increase fares in the ways that are least harmful, and again, while protecting our most vulnerable riders from those impacts. So with all of that in mind, I'm happy to support the motion and look forward to the conversation between now and September, and then in September to see the rollout of that fare freeze, so that we know that folks are being taken care of, and they know that they're being taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Elo Rivera. Director Downey.
I would have been happy to second the motion, but I just want to clarify for myself. I like the timing that was proposed, so I'm very happy with that. But you may remember maybe a year and a half ago, the Public Utilities Commission was looking at when they were going to start authorizing the monthly charge to everybody on their electric bill, because so many customers weren't using as much electricity because they had solar. So they were trying to find a way to make it so it didn't affect our most vulnerable customers. Part of the problem was they couldn't figure out how to determine what that was without providing personal financial information to the utilities, which nobody wanted to do. So they wound up struggling what it was. And so what I'm getting at is it's hard to say the most vulnerable customers, what we mean by that, unless we want to get into looking at everybody's financial situations. So I think at this point, we heard at the last meeting that we're going to look at the 3 different classifications that the state of California already does. And so I'm hoping when it comes back, staff will be able to say, this one is the most, or this one has the least income, because that's what staff's going to have to tell us. What's the difference between what we already use to calculate who is a customer that gets our benefits now from being lower or lesser income, and what's the difference? That's what's confusing to me, how we're making that decision differently than we do now. So I'll be looking forward to that in the next, whenever we get the presentation in September, because that would make it very easy for us to figure out if we understand the differences.
Thank you, Director Downey. Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to report that my staff is working with MTS, Health and Human Services is working with MTS to collect the data that we need to see how many riders are on CalFresh, Medi-Cal, and CalWorks. We started that after last week's meeting. It shouldn't be an issue to get that information. It should be fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem. Director Moreno.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. In this upcoming fiscal year, we're projecting about 83 million riders. These riders are our North Star. They're my North Star of the work that we do here as a board. For some, it is a choice, and we absolutely need these riders to help us reach climate goals, to reduce congestion, and also to champion public transit. For many others, it is the only way to get from point A to point B. Transit-reliant riders like District 8 residents that I represent help us raise the bar of our services to ensure that mobility, access to opportunity in San Diego is not tied to private vehicle ownership. I do want to thank MTS staff for your ongoing support throughout this budget cycle. This board has asked staff for many requests, and I just want to make sure, and I want to put it on the record, that my request stems from the palpable urgency I feel and have taken into consideration as a contribution to our riders. I did note in this process, when we started this process about, I think, 2 months ago, that I flagged that CEO Orso suggested from Sandag's March board retreat, exploring the use of major corridor funds to support MTS. This is a request that's lingering and that has not been fleshed out by the board. And this is something that could exist as a possibility, but I don't have a sense as to whether it's being considered viable or not. It will be a heavy lift at Sandag, but it's a lift that I think is worth taking. For those reasons and for other reasons, I want to put on the record that I just simply cannot get behind and support a fare change. But it has, taken a lot to get to this point. The budget development process, once again, would benefit from a budget committee to have a dedicated discussion, given the complexity of this budget, the fiscal cliff, and the nuances of funding buckets. This board could also stand to benefit from strategic board retreat, similar to what we experience at Sandag, that can foster engagement, reach deeper understanding on funding, and create actionable plans for board members and the public as we look forward in the future. And as part of many discussions we've had, it's been clear that this agency is looking at peer transit agencies and what they're doing to tackle this fiscal cliff. From our workshop last week, 5 out of the 12 surveyed peer agencies are pursuing or have revenue measures. And I will say we cannot rest on our laurels on a revenue measure without preparing now. If this board is serious about pursuing a revenue measure and will chart that course, this board must be prepared and proactive now. The other thing that I want to put on the record is that we can't wait for permission on the measure. We have to do a lot of the legwork, and it will take a few years. I also want to ensure that there is a strategy before us and that there are clear tactical steps to actualize something as challenging as a revenue measure. There is a significant amount of work that must happen to ensure that this organization is well positioned, and it could be a range of things that we do. So I also want to put for the record that I think this board needs to engage the state and federal legislators in ways that we have never seen before. One of the points that was made about our peer agencies was the revenue, the tax revenue that they receive. What was omitted from that discussion was the amount of subsidy that a lot of these transit agencies get from their federal representatives. So I would urge this body to seek a closer relationship with our state and local and federal legislators. So thank you for the presentation, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Director Moreno. Director Bush.
Yes, thank you to our MTS staff and leadership team for being responsive to our comments and to our direction. So I think this is in a much better place. So I do support the motion. Question for the chair, for the board. I do agree with Director Moreno's comments about restarting the budget committee and having a retreat. I think would be good, especially about the idea of Sandag and using some of those corridor funds on capital projects and shifting that over more to operations. So question on the budget, where did that leave, just for clarity, where did that leave off? And do we need to make a motion maybe from here, maybe add if the maker and the second of the who made the motion are willing to add an amendment to restart the budget committee, but I don't want to overly, I don't remember what the process was. So if that's chair appointed, I'm fine with that. But where did that leave off last time? Because I do want to know, we discussed this at the workshop last week. I would like to move forward with restarting that budget committee again.
So thank you, Director Bush, for the question. Toward the end of every year, we set up the committees and the members of those committees for the following year. So that is a process that we will go through. Which month? Is that usually November that we do that?
In November, we pick the ad hoc nominating committee, I believe. And then we usually host a meeting of them in December or early January.
So we'll start that process in November. And certainly if it is the desire of this board to have a budget committee again, that is what we will do. If it's the desire of this board to have a retreat, we will do that. So that'll be something that the board can consider along with the other appointments that we do in November.
So I don't think we should wait till November. I don't know what my colleagues feel. I'd like to see if the maker of the motion is willing to, I mean, I don't need to set timeline like starting, tomorrow or next week, but I would like us to restart the budget instead of waiting to November, starting to work on that now, especially since it looks like there's going to be some work between even now and September that staff is doing. So yeah, I'd recommend starting that now, but I'm want to hear what the maker of the motion thinks.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Vice Chair.
This year, when people were asked to volunteer to be on the budget committee, coincidentally, it was the executive committee. I don't think there was any members of the budget committee who weren't already on the executive committee. So it was a coincidence. It was the same group, and that's why there wasn't a separate committee, if I recall correctly. That doesn't mean that's going to be that way going forward. We're still going to call for budget committee. The budget committee wasn't dissolved going forward and absorbed as part of the executive committee. It still exists. And in the fall sequence, we'll be asking for participants, volunteers for the budget committee. So that will happen again this year.
Okay.
It won't automatically be the executive committee.
I appreciate that. So thank you for that clarity. So then in that case, I don't think that it needs to necessarily be a motion. I don't know if Director Moreno disagrees. I'm open to hearing your thoughts. But then what I would recommend is that the budget committee then meet before then. And if like I'm willing to do the work and participate in that part as well, and that committee discussion as well. But I do think that I would recommend that the budget committee meet before the September when staff brings back the analysis on the Fair Freeze program.
Thank you, Director. So to the Vice Chair's point, actually the executive committee, its official name is the Executive Committee and Budget Committee. I mean, we have a budget committee. It is just combined with the executive committee because the members of the two are exactly the same. And so the choice was to have one meeting a month as opposed to two. If the members of the executive committee and budget committee wish to split that out and have two meetings a month instead of one, that is entirely the call of the executive committee. Doesn't make any difference to me. We can have that discussion at the executive and budget committee meeting, but that's the status of things.
And just for clarification, the next budget committee is on September 10th. So that would be plenty of time for us to meet with the budget committee and talk about the potential for amending the budget for fiscal year 27.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for that clarity, Sharon. So yeah, and that's what I was in particular concerned about is giving some of the work and having the board give some staff some feedback and direction and at the smaller committee level before it comes to board meetings. So there's time to kind of workshop it and discuss some ideas. But I see member Director Moreno has her hand up too.
Okay, we're going to go to Director McKinnor.
I just wanted to say I'm not on the executive committee, but I was on the budget committee and would be happy to. And I did volunteer to be on it again.
Okay, thank you, Director McCann. Director Moreno.
I've been summoned. I would say that obviously we have a chair. We've given the chair the responsibility to lead us. in this agency. I will reiterate for, I think, the 10th time, this agency, this board absolutely needs a budget committee. So I'll put that on the record for the 11th time.
So then maybe, I agree with you, Director Moreno. So then maybe what I would suggest moving forward is then you all just, since we already have the budget committee, it's on the executive committee. I do think it should be split out, at least in name. So the meeting doesn't have to be the same, but I agree with you, Director Moreno.
All right, thank you, Director Bush. We have a motion in front of us to approve the staff recommendation and bring back the updated budget for consideration in September. Is there any further discussion on the motion in front of us? Seeing no further discussion, clerk, please take the vote.
Members, if you can please make the selections on your tablet. Chair, the motion passes with 12 members voting yes, 1 member voting no, and 1 member absent.
Thank you, clerk. Item 21 is the annual safety performance review and approval of an updated agency safety plan. We're going to get this presentation from Fabeann Soberg and Jared Garcia. Please feel free to get settled in, and when you're set up, feel free to begin the presentation whenever you're ready.
All right, good morning, members of the board. My name is Fabeann Soberg, and I'm the System Safety Manager for the Rail Division. With me is Jared Garcia, the Manager of Safety for Bus. We are here to present our annual safety review and also request the board's approval for our updates made to the Bus and Rail Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. So just a little background. The Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan is a rule for 49 CFR 673. It went into effect in 2019, and then it was extended until 2021, but MTS actually implemented their PTAS in July of 2020. So there are 2 updates that we are implementing into our PTAS, and those 2 updates come from corrective action plans from our 2024 triennial CPUC audit. So the first one is the maintenance inspection program, and then also element 6 for process of notifying, investigating, and reporting security breaches. So that was a security item. Now, these 2 items were already in practice, but they just weren't documented in our PTAS. So just to kind of talk about our 2024 California Public Utilities Commission triennial audit. Last year, when we gave this presentation, we hadn't received our findings from that audit. The audit took place in 2024 September, and then we didn't receive our findings until 2025 in the month of May. So we had 6 findings. We had 1 with transit enforcement, facilities, and then 4 with MOW. And like I stated before, the transit enforcement one was implemented into the PTAS. And then also the track one from MOW track was implemented in the PTAS. All the findings were addressed immediately once we received the information and corrected. And we did submit to the CPUC our corrective action plan, but we haven't received a response yet. So we'll still be waiting on that. So next time we'll give a presentation, we'll let you know what the response was from the CPUC. Also, we did our 2025 internal safety and security audit. And as you can see, we have the listed elements that we reviewed. So we had the safety certification process, safety data acquisition, rule compliance, training and certification program, procurement, the process for internal safety or security audits, and the process for generating security plans. We had no findings with the 2025 internal safety and security audit. Typically with these elements, they are heavily audited by the FTA, the FRA, and then also the CPUC. So it's really unlikely that you will have findings considering that these are heavily audited items. So next we have our safety performance measure. So part of the 49 CFR 673 rule is that we report to the board on safety performance measures. So we have 5 safety performance measures that we report on. So the first one we're going to report on is, I think I skipped one, is our fatalities. So the safety performances are designed where you have an established baseline, and then over a 3-year rolling average, you want to try to have a decrease. So our established baseline was 0.12. And as you can see in 2023 to 2025, we had a little bit of an uptick. So as far as fatalities, for 2025, we did have 6 fatalities on the REL division. 4 of those were deemed to be a suicide by the medical examiner. And then all of them were deemed to be unpreventable by our accident review committee. Things that we have done to try to prevent suicide fatalities is we did implement, or we have signage in all our stations on the REL division, and we have information for people who are seeking help or may think that they want to harm themselves. So we do have that information in stations for anybody that needs that. Next is injuries. So with the injuries, that consists of any time that a person or patron is injured on our system, on the light rail vehicle, in the station, or around the station. So our established baseline for that was 3.47. And then in 2023 to 2025, we were at 1.65. Next is major events. So major events include accidents, incidents, and then also personal injuries, and then any property damage over $25,000. Our established baseline was 4.65, and 2023 to 2025, we were at 2.29. Next, system reliability. So this is the number that you want to see an increase. And this is the amount of miles that we have between mechanical failures. So we had the established baseline of 10,259, and currently we're at 16,972. And then our last performance measure is emergency brake application. So emergency brake application is anytime that a train operator has to go into emergency brake to avoid an accident or an incident, we actually do track all those emergency brake applications, and we analyze that data. So the established baseline was 11.51 and currently at 10.74. So here is how we compare to other REL agencies in California. So for 2025, we had 21 accidents. And as you can see, compared to the other REL agencies in California, we are trending very, very well with 21 accidents for 2025. So some things that we are doing as far as accident prevention campaign, we have implemented a downtown assessment committee to evaluate Park and C Street, because that is the area where we do see a lot of accidents due to people being unfamiliar with the area, vehicle and pedestrian traffic going through that area. So we established a committee to evaluate those areas, and we actually take our committee out and we walk along Park and we walk along C Street, and we're just looking for different things that we can probably implement to enhance the safety. So if that's signage, striping, removing, branches from certain areas to increase visibility, those are the things that we're looking at, and we try to do that at least once a year. We also are coordinating with the city of San Diego on traffic signal timing, signage, and roadway marking improvements. We have 2 really hot spots where we see a lot of illegal turns, and that is at Park and Market, and then also at Park and J Street. So what we working with the city is to change out the lens on the traffic signals to indicate to vehicle drivers that they can only go straight or they can only go right, but they can't make those illegal turns. So we're currently in the process of that. We also have our line supervisors that are out along Park Boulevard and C Street on a daily basis. And what they're doing is they're overseeing street operations for the operators, and they're providing coaching opportunities. And then they're also just reinforcing safe operating practices. We've also enhanced flag person requirements at the courthouse at America Plaza Station. We have some indicators there and some switches, and the purpose of that is to make sure that we are reducing the violations that could lead to derailments, collisions, or other safety events. We also have put our training supervisors through training through the FTA. So they went through the TSI instructor course training, and that's giving them the opportunity to network with other trainers and then also kind of give them some new perspectives and new ideas on how to train operators in other departments. And then lastly, the train operators completed their annual prevention training focused on defensive driving and operating skills. And this is also to help reduce practical drift that we're seeing. So we can say that we have new operators that are making mistakes, but practical drift is also a big issue when you are a veteran operator as well. So we want to make sure that we're reminding you of the defensive driving techniques that we have. Another thing that safety was working on and has completed is our hostile threat and active assailant SOP. We currently didn't have one. So some things that we did to develop that SOP was we got with the Department of Homeland Security, and we hosted a 2 90-minute sessions for MTS employees to participate in. And then once we completed those sessions, we conducted a scenario-based tabletop exercise involving transit enforcement, rail supervisors, train operators, maintenance supervisors, and then safety and marketing. After that, we developed the after action plan, and we identified lessons learned, and then we also looked at where we can improve. So that's SOP was established to have guidelines for responding to hostile threats and active assailant incidents with the goal of protecting personnel and ensuring rapid notification, and then coordinating with responding law enforcement agencies. So we always, year after year, take the opportunity to invite law enforcement onto our property. This is the El Cajon PD SWAT team. We invite them to our property because there's a couple of things that we want to get across with PD. If there is an accident or incident, they're going to be the first responders. So we want to make sure that when they come onto our system, that they're going to be safe when they come onto our system. And then also they have an understanding of our operations as well. So this is just a couple of pictures of them doing their tubular assault training on our train that we hold in the C yard. Also, with safety, I think it's really important that we train and educate. So we did host a couple of FTA Transportation Safety Institute courses. One was the Transit Rail Incident Investigation, and then also the Transit System Security. So the courses that we host, we have people from all over the country that come and travel to these courses to take them. And then we also have our internal employees participate in these courses as well. And then lastly, I want to share with the board is our Flag Person Appreciation Day. So this was our first annual Flag Person Appreciation Day. As you're probably aware, or if you're not aware, the flag person position is a very important position when it comes to construction. So we have our Orange Line project that's going on right now, and the flag person position is a big part of that. That position allows us to operate during revenue service hours, and then also allows construction to continue during those hours, and then also after hours. So they have a very important job of keeping those construction roadway workers safe while trains are operating on our system. So we just wanted to, give a shout out to them and let them know that they are appreciated. We know that it's a tough job. There's a lot of, odd hours, The areas that they work in are sometimes are not that great, but we do appreciate their position. So we wanted to make sure that they have a day that we celebrate them. Okay, thank you. And then I will now pass it off to Jarrett.
Thank you, Fabian. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here today. The bus performance measures are based on calendar year reporting to the National Transit Database. Previously, we had a 3-year baseline. The bipartisan infrastructure law changed this to a 3-year rolling average. The performance measures do not consider crimes fault or preventability and are based only on vehicle revenue miles. And in calendar year 2025, we traveled just over 24.2 million revenue miles. The first performance measure is fatalities. Unfortunately, there were 2 fatalities in calendar year 2025. Both of these fatalities, the bus was at a complete stop at the time of the collision. Law enforcement determined that we were not at fault for either of these collisions. And our internal review committee determined that these were non-preventable accidents. The next performance measure is major events. Major events is essentially anytime you have a collision involving a tow or a collision involving a medical transport. It does also include some security events. And so for our performance targets for calendar year 2025, we did see an increase for the fixed route side compared to both our baseline and our 3-year rolling average. There's a couple factors that come into play for this increase in major events. One is that previously we did not consider security related NTD reportable events included in this. We now do. That was due to a change in the National Transportation Safety Plan that went into effect in 2025. Another thing that changed is NCD removed the threshold of disabling damage for a tow. Previously, only major events where a vehicle was towed due to disabling damage was included in this category. No longer do you consider if the vehicle was disabled. Any reason a vehicle is towed following a collision is now included in this category. The next performance measure is injuries. Injuries include all of the major event injuries as well as other more simple events such as a slip, trip, or fall. You will also see an increase here on the fixed route side compared to both the baseline and the 3-year rolling average. There are a couple factors that are coming into play here. One of those was that we had a very low year in calendar year 2023. We had only 64 injuries in 2023. All other years prior to that, we were 93 or above, and most years were about 110. The other thing that contributed to this large number of injuries was accidents where there were 3 or more injuries in that one event. And no other year going back to 2018 did we have more than 2 of these. In 2025, there were 5 of these. All 5 of these were determined to be non-preventable by our internal review, and none of those 5 events were we found to be at fault by law enforcement. The next performance measure is system reliability. This is intended to measure a state of good repair. You can see that our fixed total is slightly below our baseline and our 3-year rolling average, while on the paratransit side, it is quite a bit higher. There are 4 major factors that come into play when it comes to system reliability. The biggest is fleet age or average fleet age, the vehicle length, the fuel type of the vehicle, and also the service that is being provided by that type of vehicle all come into play for system reliability measures. You can see on this slide, there's a breakdown by event type. You can see that 55% of these events were simple slip, trip, and falls. 39% were due to a collision, 4% were security related, and 2% were a result of a fire or an evacuation. All of these events are reviewed by our internal accident review committee, where we will look at both causal and contributing factors to determine if there's something that could have been done differently to prevent the accident from happening. And this last year, 85% of these incidents or accidents were determined to be non-preventable, and only 15% were determined to be preventable. This is pretty standard. We typically range on preventability for NTD events, usually goes between 10 and 20% every year. This next slide is not about NTD, it's about our overall preventable accident rate for fixed route. This is part of Board Policy 42. In FY25, we finished with a 1.21. This is a little bit higher than kind of our historical average if you go back the last 10 years or so, but we did see a slight decrease of about 3% year over year. Our rapid preventable accidents are not part of Board Policy 42, but are part of our performance improvement program. We did in FY24 see an increase compared to historical past. That was due to the implementation of the South Bay Iris Rapid. As we become more familiar with that, we saw a 36% decrease from FY25 to FY24, and the majority of that decrease had to do with lower accidents on the South Bay Iris Rapid. All 5 of our bus yards are inspected annually by the California Highway Patrol. They do vehicle inspections, look at our driver licenses, medical certificates, our training records, driving hours of service, drug and alcohol testing, and all 5 of our properties successfully passed the annual CHP inspection. Every year, we make a point to recognize all of our frontline employees for safety. And this last year, we recognized 14 bus operators for the National Safety Council's Million Mile Award, as well as 274 operators for a year of safe driving, 126 maintenance employees for a year of no accidents or chargeable events, and 29 of our frontline support services also for a year. Last month, APTA recognized us for our Gold Award for Safety. This was for the work that our training department has done to reduce accidents for our hotspot locations and the use of drones and other technology. This is the 3rd APTA Gold Award for Safety on the bus side in the last 11 years. And it's our 5th Gold Award for Safety from APTA, and if you include rail. One of the updates that we made to our PTASP was the update to our risk reduction program. The bipartisan infrastructure law requires us to document measures we take to reduce visibility improvements for bus operators. This change was a result of our safety committee recommendation. So this first picture on the far left is the PA system, also known as a speakeasy. When it was installed at the factory, you can see it was mounted at a higher position. The safety committee recommended that we retrofit our existing buses to lower that speakeasy to the very bottom of the dash. That has been completed. Additionally, our latest fleet of buses that we received last year, we replaced the speakeasy with a microphone to further reduce that blind spot or obstruction. And starting with our next shipment of New Flyer buses, New Flyer has done a retrofit where they've slimmed that A-pillar down a little bit to further improve visibility for bus operators. So in conclusion, for changes to our agency safety plan, we've added a tunnel inspection program. We've added a process for security breaches. We've updated our safety performance measures and updated our risk reduction program. And with that, it's a staff recommendation that the San Diego Metropolitan Transit System Board of Directors approve updates to the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, also known as the PTASP. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment. I wanted to thank Fabeann and Jared for their presentation. I know that we get jazzed up about this subject. It's very important. Safety, the most important thing about what we do as a transit operator. And I think that the two of them have done a stellar job really focusing our efforts on operating safely in a very challenging urban environment where a lot impacts us. And so again, I just wanted to highlight that. It might not be as exciting to all of you, but it is to all of us.
And nothing could be more important. Thank you both very much for the presentation and for all you do. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. Blair Beekman, if you can please unmute yourself.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Thanks a lot for this item. It was really heavy. A lot of, it's working with very physical objects, geometric shapes, how we relate to each other in our day-to-day lives on the street and stuff. I was interested how this item, to me, it's my hope that our trolley drivers, you've created a very efficient way that they can work. I don't have my timer on right now. Can you guys warn me when I got about 30 seconds and 15 seconds left? I wanted to comment, if I can be warned at those times, that the trolley drivers, you've developed a very efficient way that they don't talk to anybody. And they're just a bit cold in how they take off at trolley stations and that they don't answer phone lines. And I think that's a bit of a problem. I know you're trying to respect public safety, but I think that needs to be addressed. Also with public safety, we have to really acknowledge that there is a big future of biometric tech coming in and in our transit systems and throughout our communities. I mean, it's here already, but we just have to be more clear that it is here. And we don't know how to have those conversations openly yet. I hope you guys can really practice how to make the attempts to make that conversation more open and clear.
30 seconds left.
Thanks a lot. A more clear and understandable to the community. Doing biometric tech in order to gauge health and items like that on our transit systems, that's agreeable and understandable.
15 seconds left.
Thank you. When you start doing that with security measures and surveillance, that's a problem. And that we have to distinguish between the two and be very clear on those sort of guidelines and boundaries.
Your time has expired. That concludes public comments, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. We will now open board discussion on this item, beginning with Director Bush.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve this update and so really want to thank staff. And yes, Sharon, it might not be, maybe we're not showing the excitement rah, but it really is something to be proud of. So really want to compliment you both for the work that your team, all of your guys' leadership has done, because the safety, that's a budgetary impact too, because that reduces our liability exposure and we don't often see directly those cost savings or the health benefits, but they exist or there. And so it's something to really be proud of. In particular, what I really liked seeing was I saw it on the rail comparison. Maybe I missed it on the bus, but I really appreciated the comparison to the other state, the transit agencies and how far. Can you actually bring that slide up again? And if you have it for bus, that'd be great too. But seeing that was really impactful for me. Just seeing, because these are very robust transit agencies and systems, and so to see that comparison that puts into effect or puts it into, I think, context, the numbers, the money that we are discussing with budget and the safety implications. So it's so it's right here. This is something really to be proud of. And so really want to thank all of our MTS staff, our leadership on achieving numbers like this, and hope that we continue to move forward with this. This is a big victory. Thank you all.
Thank you, Director Bush. Director Elo Rivera. We have a second of the motion from Director Dillard. Director Elo Rivera.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation and more importantly for the work. It is really, really important, and I am glad to see that we perform in the way that we do. For all the reasons that Sharon mentioned and Member Bush mentioned. One question I have. We previously talked a bit about what I think could be some benefits to the system of partially closing the system, of not having a closed system all the way around, but partially closing it. And I would be curious the next time we discuss this matter to consider how partially closing the system at some of our busiest trolley stations or trolley stops could potentially reduce the incidents that we have. Again, I see that we're performing well. I think that we could make we could increase our fare recovery and make our stops feel safer and minimize these sort of incidents with the partial closing of the system. So it's something that I'd like to see in the future, at least give some consideration to that.
Yeah, so the planning department is already analyzing all our stations to determine where we could do that. And we've also been talking with our peers, most recently St. Louis. Their system has closed up a lot of their light rail stations. So we want to find out what they're working towards, but our planning department is actively working towards that goal.
I appreciate that, Sharon. And can we, hearing it in the context of safety would also be really important. The fare piece is part of the conversation. There's the safety component as well.
Yes.
Which is, you often say is our number one priority. San Francisco also, I think, has partially closed their system. I think.
Yeah, and LA Metro did it, BART, a lot
Maybe
of
it's
the
BART that I'm thinking of.
agencies have been moving in that direction, and it is partially because of safety, and even reduction of incidents within the stations.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I would just add, it seems like this is a good topic to start fleshing out with the Public Security Committee with that committee chair's permission, but that's really within their subject matter expertise that then we could get feedback as we go through that analysis.
Very good. Thank you, Director Ela Rivera. Let's go to Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you so much, Chair. I really just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. And this is, we get this update, but you all are working on this every single day, which is producing the numbers that we have. So thank you so much for that. I wanted to ask just for system reliability, just one more time, what is entailed in that? And I saw for the rail, we were, I think it was slide number 9. Will you just briefly break it down for me? Because I didn't quite understand. I know we had it for bus and rail, but this one. Okay, no problem.
Okay. And so you just wanted me to go through kind of what those factors were?
Yes, what are the factors that determine system reliability?
Sure. So the 4 main factors are fleet age, vehicle length, fuel type, and service type.
Yeah, but I think it's more, it goes to this, the definition of reliability is really defined by the Federal Transit Administration when they ask us to report these statistics. So they want to know that everybody's reporting the same statistic the same way. And so that's why the definition of system reliability is the distance between major mechanical failures. And so, Mike Wygant, you are stepping up to give us more.
Yeah, Mike Wygant, Chief Operating Officer, Transit Services. So if the question is really about why the variation in those major components of it, there's a lot of factors in system reliability. It's how many times the vehicle fails per mile or per revenue hour. We look at it several different ways. But for instance, a 60-foot articulated bus is going to have much higher failure rate than a 40-foot bus because the per mile is the same, but you got 30% more weight, load, and components to fail. The average speed of the route or the system is a huge factor. Just like your car, you see all freeway miles, it's a lot less of a load. So inner city vehicles have much more of a higher failure rate. The propulsion type, whether it be battery electric or CNG, has a lot of variation. We see good information out of our battery electric buses, but their failure rates are starting as they get older to really dip faster than our CNG vehicles. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of why there's huge variation. So
there is, and the baseline has changed quite a bit in this. Well, the chart for the rail, the baseline changed quite a bit over the years. So just the last thing I'll say on the Public Security Committee and hearing around about updates, closing some systems, or I don't know the word that my colleague used, but I know what he's talking about. I am happy to hear that in Public Security Committee. I just don't want it to be, I don't want us to silo that conversation. I think that's what the council member was getting at, just us making sure that we are including planning, we're including all of our folks that are involved in that type of discussion. So I just don't, that's my only thing. I don't want to silo it because I think it's a holistic approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem. Seeing no further discussion, we have a motion by Director Bush, a second by Director Dillard to approve the staff recommendation. Clerk, please take the vote.
Members, if you can please make the selections on your tablets. Chair, the motion passes with 14 members voting yes and 1 member absent.
Thank you, Clerk. Item 22 is an informational item, the fiscal year 2026 third quarter performance monitoring report. We'll turn it over to Brent Boyd and Matthew Grace for the presentation. Please feel free to get settled in and begin the presentation whenever you're ready.
Good morning, everybody. Brent Boyd, Director of Planning and Scheduling. Here with Matt Grace, a data analyst in our planning department who's responsible for our performance monitoring program. So we're here for the Q3 performance monitoring report. This is in response to Board Policy 42, which is our board policy, which essentially governs our evaluation of transit and our implementation of transit service changes. It's adopted vision for customer-focused, competitive, integrated, and sustainable system. We look at our system by service type: bus, light rail, and demand response. And then within bus, we have a whole bunch of different types of bus services: express routes, premium express, rapid, and so on. And we evaluate those as categories and routes within each category. Then we look at a number of performance indicators, and we have performance targets established, and we review the routes in relation to those performance targets. And then we provide annual and quarterly updates. We were last here in March for the Q1 and Q2 update, and then we'll be back in probably September or so for the annual and Q4 update. These are all the statistics that we look at. There's about 20 of them. They're either looked at on an annual or quarterly basis. We are not going to talk about all of those today, but they're included in your board packet. Within your board packet is our quarterly report, which summarizes most of these statistics by route and category and on a system-wide basis. We're going to talk about the ones that are in bold here: total passengers, average weekday, or passengers per revenue hour, on-time performance, and subsidy per passenger. Most importantly, ridership, we're always interested in that. Q1 was basically static. Q2 is down a little bit. So we're seeing some good trends for Q3. Since COVID, we're really on a increase of about 7 or 8% per year, and it's slowed down over the last year or so. And that's something that we've seen across the country, and I'll get into that in a second. But we're seeing some good trends for Q3. So we're up about 2%. 3.5% on the bus, and trolley is basically static. About 9% increase on demand response, which is our MTS access program. Looking in advance in Q4, we saw about a 3% ridership increase in April. May is about static, but in May, we're actually seeing increased ridership on all the different day types. But we had fewer weekdays in this May than last May. So our overall ridership is static, but the ridership by day is up, if that makes any sense. So we're seeing some good trends for Q4. Overall ridership trends, we just want to show how much our ridership varies by month. We go up and down throughout the year and from year to year. So anytime that we're looking at ridership, it's not really a static number. We're not going to have that number consistently. It's always going up and down. So right now we're in an upward trend. In terms of national ridership trends, I mentioned that there was a real increase in ridership right after COVID, and that's kind of slowed down a little bit in the last year or so. We're seeing that on a nationwide basis. So these are the top 25 agencies within the country comparing ridership to 2019, which was the last year before the impacts of COVID. And we're in the dark red line there. You see we dropped significantly in FY21, as did everybody else, but we dropped a lot less than most of the other large transit agencies. We had a higher floor. And recovered faster than most other transit agencies. You see we had a really high growth rate, FY22, 23, 24, and it's tailed off a little bit since then. And you see that's the same thing that's happened with that dark black line, which is the average of these top 25 agencies. There's one agency that's outperforming us right now in ridership recovery, and that's New York. And New York is just a totally different animal with transit. They carry about 45% of all the transit trips in the entire country. So comparing to New York is a little bit apples to oranges there. Then you look at Southern California specifically, and you see the same thing. So again, really high ridership growth after the floor of COVID. And then the growth has tailed off a little bit in the last year or so. But we are still outperforming all of the other Southern California agencies. The blue one you see there is NCTD, green is LA Metro, and orange is OCTA. Those are really the biggest agencies in Southern California. One note, the line that you see above us, that's Anaheim Resort Transportation. And when we bring this for another update next quarter, that line won't be there because they actually closed the system down March 31st due to budget issues and lack of revenues and so on. So you don't see transit agencies closing very much, but that happened.
But I do want to mention that they carried as many passengers as North County Transit District did prior to the COVID epidemic.
Yeah.
So just to let you know that fiscal problems can lead to dire situations.
Yeah, they carry about 8 million passengers per year. So definitely a significant agency. Then we look at passengers per revenue hour. So that's simply the number of passengers that we carry divided by the number of service hours that we operate. And we always want to see this number going up. We want to see it going up year over year. And if you look at the bus side, it's gone up in all different categories, and then that's a great sign. Light rail on the trolley side, it's gone down slightly. And the reason for that is last January is when we implemented all of the extra service funded by SB 125 to extend the 15-minute trolley service till the end of the night. It was previously every half hour after about 7 or 8 o'clock. We added these trips in, which was a great thing for the region. It really gave our riders a lot more flexibility, but they're not the most productive trips. So we added service at a little bit higher rate than the passenger levels increased. So that's why that number came down slightly. So we'll see what happens with that over the next quarterly reports. On-time performance, we have different standards for different types of routes, 85% for urban, frequent, and rapid, 90% for all other categories. We're not meeting the target on all of them, but that's something that we continue to look at and we continue to focus on. Then the last thing we want to talk about is financial metrics. We really look at 3 different aspects: the cost per passenger, which is our overall operating cost divided by the total number of passengers. And then the revenue per passenger, which is our fare revenue per passenger. You see that's gone up slightly due to our increased fare enforcement and so on. And then the net is the subsidy per passenger. And that's something that we want to see come down every year. We want to see our cost per passenger come down every year. That has not been the case this year, with a lot of the issues that we've been talking about, the budget increasing costs and static revenue and so on. So our cost per passenger or subsidy per passenger is going up slightly, which is something that we hope to change in the future. But I do like to put that in perspective with what's happening around us. So even though our costs are going up, we are much lower than transit agencies as a whole. This is a report that San Francisco Muni produced a few months ago, comparing all the top agencies in the country in terms of cost per passenger. And you see we're about $5 per passenger. And this data is a year or two old, but it's still relevant today. We're about $5 per passenger compared to the peer average, about $9 per passenger. And again, we are lower than all of the other major transit agencies out there, other than New York, which again is a whole different animal. So we like to put these increasing costs in perspective with what else is going on in the transit agency. So that's it. That concludes the presentation. If you have any questions or comments, and again, you have all kinds of data within your board packet.
Thank you. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not have any public comments, Chair.
All right, we will now open board discussion item.
Chair,
Yeah.
we have one public comment. I apologize for
Okay,
that.
let's go ahead and take that comment.
Blair Beekman, if you can please unmute yourself.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Thank you so much that you saw my hand raised. I was just a touch late on this one and you saw that. Thank you so much. I'll try to be better in the future on that. And thank you for noting time. The clock is working on Zoom at this time, so thank you. Yeah, I wanted to comment on a few things. First, thank you to board person Ella Rivera asking questions about previous transit systems in the Bay Area that can possibly be good examples for service cut items, how to address. BART is the big one right now. Muni has also gone through, SF Muni has gone through serious cuts too, that they're trying to work through, that actually can be good examples for yourselves of how to be cutting and still maintaining good services. Trying to, and good luck on those efforts. I wanted to emphasize the importance that you know, it is a fair exchange that in order to keep service, you want to raise fares a bit. But at the same time, there is just real noble intentions in realizing that a $5 increase is just simply a bit high. And how can that conversation take place in the following months to possibly lower it or to create a freeze for a certain portion? Good luck on those efforts. It's a really important idealistic conversation to have, and to have that conversation. Thank you. I'm amazed you can have that conversation, and I can't thank you enough. I've really liked the MTS a lot. It offers nighttime service, and its service routes are just really nice. It's a really good bus line, and you're trying to ask the questions to maintain that good service. And so thank you for that. I have 9 seconds left. Good luck, what you can do in the following months. Thanks.
Chair, that concludes public comments.
Thank you, Clerk. We will now open board discussion on this item. If there is any, this is an informational item, so no motion is necessary. Seeing no board discussion, we will thank you again for the presentation and the update. Do we have any board member or CEO communications?
If I may,
Yes.
I sent out an email this morning. It's a follow-on to the email I sent last week about what's happening at the state budget with the greenhouse gas reduction funds that transit is supported through the program. But CARB, despite all of our advocacy efforts, CARB did move to change the program and to open up other interests to fund them prior to funding any of the transit programs. And now there's the struggle is in the state legislature with the leadership of the legislature and the governor negotiating final points for the final budget. This is kind of an urgent thing now for us to try to get them to recognize the importance of funding, for instance, the SB 125 funds that we have been relying on to really help us stretch our budgets. Also, the AHSC, which is an affordable housing fund that is really important to a lot of the affordable housing that our region has been so successful in building. And then also the TIRCP, which we rely on to do things like the Orange Line Improvement Program. The ZETC, which is the zero emissions program, that's also, you know, potentially at risk. All of these things are right now being discussed by the leadership. And, you know, if you have any connections with especially Assembly Member Ward or Senator Weber Pearson, et cetera. If you wanted to reach out to them and suggest that they engage with the leadership, that would be helpful as well. So it's further information in your email that I sent you.
Thank you, Ms. Cooney. Let's go to Director Hall.
Yeah, Chris Ward will be at the Dine and Dialogue in East County on the 26th, so might be advantageous for a few of us to show up.
Thank you, Director Hall. Director Leyba Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to extend an invite to individuals this weekend. So in the most southwesterly city, which is Coastal Utopia, Imperial Beach, tonight we're having the Taste of IB. Tomorrow we are having a band honoring our 70th anniversary at Pier Plaza. It's not a banda band, but it will be happening Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday is our powwow. So for individuals that may be interested in trying to get to NASCAR, during traffic, you could always stop in Imperial Beach and enjoy Coastal Utopia. Thank you.
Very good to know. Thank you, Director Leyba Gonzalez. Let's go to Director Downey.
Actually, the timing is perfect. I wanted to thank MTS for all the work we're doing to try and deal with NASCAR weekend in Coronado. I tell everybody who actually lives there, stay home, don't go anywhere. But for those people that are coming in to enjoy NASCAR, again, thank you very much. MTS has worked with us. Caltrans has worked with us. Everybody's trying to make sure that it doesn't stop freeways coming in or out. So I appreciate that, and I apologize if it does. We didn't vote for this. The Navy decided they were doing it, and that was that. I also did want to mention the most recent Sandag Transportation Committee, who did vote, as you all saw in the news, to approve the fare increase at the meeting last week, and then no reason they won't vote to approve it again in the future. But one of the things that happened at that meeting, and I was very impressed because I pitched a fit when Sandag staff had originally suggested that MTS not be approved for its Transnet funding because there was some issues with our efficiency and what we were costing per mile. That was corrected. We filed it, everything was approved. But more importantly, the Sandag staff recognized that we are actually one of the most efficient transit systems in the state. And they did not mean to imply that we were not. So I just wanted you all to know that. So that was very helpful for us, for everybody discussed, as I pointed out the last meeting. We want them to want to give us some more money when the board gets a chance to allocate some of that Transnet money. So we have to show we're doing our part. So I just want to let you know that I thought that was good for staff at Sandag to mention that. So it was very clear to everybody. They did not have any questions about our performances in terms of efficiency and what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Downey. Thank you for defending our honor. Director McCann.
Thank you very much. I wanted to go ahead, if anybody's doing anything later this afternoon or this evening, we are having the San Diego FC soccer celebration, and we're going to have 3 games today. We're going to have Switzerland versus Bosnia. Then we're going to have a very important game with Qatar versus Canada. And then at 6 o'clock, we're going to have the most important game for today, which is Mexico versus South Korea. And then at that time, after 8 o'clock, we're going to have one of the best bands around. It's going to be Banda El Recodo. So come on down. It's free. And again, I want to thank MTS for their assistance with getting people there. Thank you.
Big day in Chula Vista. All right. Thank you, Director McCann. Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you so much, Chair. Just briefly, my office is hosting a Juneteenth flag raising today at 1:30. So this is Juneteenth weekend. It's a very important year as we celebrate 250 years of our country, but also just acknowledging that everyone was not free at that time. And so Juneteenth is a celebration of when the last group of enslaved people found out that they were free. And so we try to commemorate that every year. And this year, if you're not doing anything before you go to Chula Vista for the soccer festivities, please stop by the County of San Diego at 1:30 as we are honoring community groups and individuals and raising the flag. Thank you.
Very good, down at the County Administration Building. All right, let's go to Director Mendoza.
Yes, I just wanted to add that the city of Lemon Grove has a Juneteenth flag raising at 3:30 this afternoon. And our city hall is located about a block from the downtown trolley stop. So no worries about parking. And then following the flag raising, there's a celebration at the park, which sits right next to the city hall. And that celebration, I think, goes until 6 or 7 o'clock tonight, and it's free community celebration. And then today on my way here, I got on at the Massachusetts station, and there was a woman there who did not speak English, and she asked me if I could help her get a ticket. And I don't usually buy a ticket because I have a pass. So, and I found that the machine very easy for me to use because I speak English, but I didn't see if there was like a button that she could have pressed to have the instructions in English. And it is, I think it is very, or in Spanish, it's, I don't know if this is something we can think about as time goes along, but luckily I was there and I could help her get her ticket. But we might consider some way that we can, you can press an English or Spanish button, because I think we have a lot of writers who are not English speakers or English is their first language. And luckily, I know just enough Spanish to be dangerous.
Very good. Thank you for raising that point, Director Mendoza. All right. Item 24 is any remaining non-agenda public comment. I think we do have one or two. Clerk, do we have more non-agenda public comment?
We do. Marshall, if you can please make your way to the podium.
How much time do I have? Okay. I love MTS and especially the 910 Express. The bus drivers are created to drive at night. Nothing upsets them or distracts them from driving at night. No dogs, no pit bulls, no wheelchair riders, nobody arguing or lies about not having fare. I heard it last night. I only have a $20 bill. She was in a wheelchair. And Mexico is another country. And one time I straddled both, and here was Mexico and here was San Diego. Reason one, the bus 910 keeps me from being robbed when I fall asleep and rained on. My umbrella gets stolen. I am a graduate from San Diego State University. I have a degree in psychology. I am certified peer support specialist. I'm 70 years old and young. Don't be fooled by this. I read a book because they have the lights on. I read a book until I fall asleep. I fell asleep twice within the last 3 days and hit my head. And someone called the police because I didn't have my phone. And they said, what trolley stop are you going to be at? The ambulance came. Well, they called the ambulance. Police was given the next trolley stop, and I was taken to Chula Vista Scripps. The way it works, it's the first available bed they have. And I want to thank you. And the homeless hospital is Scripps Mercy. And I say Scripps Chula Vista is better. But if I say that to anybody at Scripps Mercy, they might hit me. And I would have to be admitted. And $23.
Your time has expired, ma'am.
Thank you for the public comment. I represent Scripps Mercy, but we're glad that you're doing okay. All right, is there any further public comment?
Javier Haros, if you can please unmute yourself.
Hey, my name is Javier Haros. I am a resident of the community adjacent to the H Street Trolley Station in Chula Vista. First of all, good morning, Chair, board members, and staff. I am here respectfully today to request an update regarding the pedestrian access closure proposal that was submitted to MTS and presented at a board meeting on November 20th, 2025. Over the past several years, residents have documented significant ongoing public safety, security, and quality of life concerns associated with the unrestricted access points connecting the station area to our neighborhood. These issues have resulted in repeated impacts on residents, property, community infrastructure, and the overall safety of the area. Since our original submission, residents have continued gathering evidence, documented incidents, and collecting community support. We have also developed a conceptual improvement proposal that would enhance security while maintaining pedestrian access to the station somewhat. As part of that effort, the Holly Gardens Homeowners Association is willing to fund the construction of a proposed perimeter wall modification that would include a secured locked pedestrian gate subject to MTS review and approval. That would include, we believe this approach would provide a.
Your time has expired. Chair, that concludes public comments.
Thank you, Clerk. We have one closed session item this morning, a conference with legal counsel on existing litigation. Clerk, do we have any public comment on the closed session item?
We have no public comments, Chair.
Okay, the board's next meeting is July 30th at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we will now move into closed session.
Reporting out of closed session, agenda item number 27, closed session conference with legal counsel, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1 in the case of Catherine Noya versus MTS. The board received a report and gave instructions to legal counsel.
Meeting has adjourned at 11:10 a.m.